Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hi. It's great to see you all here this evening. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and I'm the senior minister of this beautiful spiritual community that we call the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living, which is a faith-based organization that blesses all paths to God. So we hope that there are many paths being celebrated here tonight, and we are so honored to have the Interfaith Amigos with us. So it's my pleasure this evening to introduce to you the Interfaith Amigos. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.
We could sit down now.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming here tonight. Thank you, Bonnie, and for the opportunity to give us the chance to share some things with you, things we've been learning along the road of our pilgrimage for the last 12 years or so. We begin our presentations with this declaration. It's a troubled world, is it not? It's a troubled world. In fact, it recalls the first sentence of Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled. Anyone know what that was, remember? Life is difficult, absolutely. He doesn't say it's bad, or he doesn't say it's impossible, but the phrase life is difficult does suggest the need for intentions, the need for inner work, and so forth. One of our favorite ways to point to this reality of difficulty comes through the 20th century Roman Catholic author Flannery O'Connor. By the way, Ted and I were English majors, okay? Jamal was an economics major.
I survived, yes.
He already knew how to speak English and about 5 other languages. Flannery O'Connor, in her book about writing, Mystery and Manners, quotes St. Cyril of Jerusalem, bishop in the 5th century CE, who said, "We all go to God, but we must all pass by the dragon." She goes on to say, it is of this mysterious passage, past the dragon, or into his jaws, that stories of any substance will be concerned to tell. It is of this mysterious passage, past the dragon, or into his jaws, that stories of any substance will be concerned to tell. We believe that interfaith dialogue can contribute to giving us tools to cope with the difficulty and bring us healing and joy.
So first I have to say Shabbat Shalom.
Amen.
There we are. Celebration already.
It's okay.
Timing is everything,
yeah,
you know? That's
great. We worked that out. Normally, Shabbat is translated as rest, as if even in the myth, God needed to rest. I think that's a mistranslation. Shevet, same letters, means to dwell. I think what happens after a period of creation, any period of creation, is a consciousness that dwells into that creation and makes it real. As if without that consciousness, the creation would kind of fade away again. So that the activity of Shabbat is actually crucial. Those of you in Center for Spiritual Living know that consciousness. And we are all called to that, to absolutely and deeply affirm creation exactly as it is. To let go of our resistance that keeps it stuck. To let go of our resistance to ourselves as we are that keeps us stuck. and just say yes to it all so that the creation can continue and evolve and be Shabbated when it's time. We start with two assumptions. One assumption is that every authentic spiritual and religious path is an avenue to a shared universal. And when a path thinks it owns that universal, we're all in trouble. Because that kind of belief will virtually always lead to violence. The second assumption is that spirituality is always inclusive. Spirituality refers to that state of consciousness which opens with the embrace of welcome to all parts of self, to each other, to our world, to our universe, to our multiverse. The exclusivity that binds us to the ego, which is often the dragon that stands in our way, is healed when we allow ourselves to open to the inclusivity of spirituality and of spirit.
My friends, first of all, what an honor and joy it is to be here in this semicircle of love. Just a few minutes ago we were talking in the green room about this wonderful 13th century sage, someone you know, Rumi. And he has this beautiful utterance. He never wrote, he just uttered. His utterance is, "Oh please, come out of the circle of time and enter the circle of love." And one of the best ways to cultivate this circle of love, we know from history, is in spaces, in times of polarization. The secret is to get to know the other on a human level. There's some verses from the Quran that have become like mantras for interfaith. The verses, if you summarize them, they say that, well, I'm saying literally, the verse says, if God wanted, God could have made all of us one single community. But out of a divine design, God chose to create diversity. It goes on to say different religions, different languages, different colors. It continues, made us into nations and tribes, men and women, for one primary reason. And the words are, so you might get to know the other, heart to heart. Simple but not easy. Another verse in the Quran, tongue-in-cheek, it says, Allah says, and we have created some of you to be a trial for others.
Normally, he looks at me when he says that.
And to Don also, yes. Equal opportunities. The key is to practice the 3 cups of tea. Listen, respect, connect. As a Muslim, I'm very conscious of this because do you remember the controversy, Ground Zero in New York, where they were building an Interfaith Center with a mosque, and it creates such an uproar. And sure enough, there was a lot of anger, a lot of distrust, a lot of suspicion. A Gallup poll said that in every single state in America, as a result of that backlash, they said, I don't want a mosque to be built in my state. 60% of Americans said, I don't want a mosque in my state. Only 37% said, I'm in favor of that. But where's the good news? The good news is each one of the 60% who said no Each one said, I don't know personally even one Muslim. But each of the 37% who said yes said, I know personally at least one Muslim. So I know I'm overdoing it by saying it, but really there is no shortcut but to get to know the other. That sage Rumi said, oh God, you have created this I, you, we, they, to play the game of adoration with yourself. We should play that game.
So we've been working together since shortly after 9/11, because the events that followed that tragedy demonstrated how far we are from peaceful solutions to the world's problems.
We wanted to find out why interfaith dialogue had not been able to bring us to places of deeper understanding and even to reconciliation.
When we got together, we did what most interfaith groups do when they get together. We brought to each other our sacred texts. And we read, Ki
Let's try again.
That's how it was for the first 2 years. Obviously, we do that as a little skit. But the truth is, well, maybe not, maybe that wasn't obvious. The truth is to truly open to the wisdom of another's tradition is in many ways a dangerous thing. Whether we're honest about it or not, often we believe that our tradition, whatever it is, has greater clarity and greater wisdom. And we also get concerned that if we really open to the beauty of another's tradition, we might lose our identification and the preciousness of our own community. We've discovered the exact opposite is true. That the more we are able to learn of the beauty of another's tradition, the deeper we're able to perceive the wisdom in our own. So we'd like to share the words that we were reading simultaneously. This is from the book of Deuteronomy. Ki ha-mitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavcha hayom. For the way, the connection that I give you today, lo niflethi mimecha, it's not too wondrous for you, v'lo rechokahi, and it's not distant. Lo v'shamayim hi lemor miya lanu hashamayima, v'yikacheha lanu v'yashme'enu ota v'na'asena. It's not in the heaven that we should say, who can go up to the heaven for us and get it and bring it back to us, that we might do it. V'lo me'ever layam hi lemor miya avor lanu el ever hayam, v'yikacheha lanu v'yashme'enu ota v'na'asena. It's not across the water that we should say, who can cross the water for us and bring it back to us so that we can hear it and so that we can do it. Ki karov elecha hadavar ma'od. The essential principle is extremely close to you. Beficha uvilvavcha la'asoto. It's in your heart, ready to be spoken through your lips to accomplish it.
Thanks, Brother Ted. I'm going to read from the Gospel of John. I'll read in English. There's a disconnect in Christianity in some ways from the original language. Hebrew, of course, is used in Jewish worship. Arabic is used in Islamic worship. Greek is not used in Christian worship, at least not in this country, which is too bad. I mean, there's a visceral sense that you're listening to the same thing today that was spoken 2,000, 3,000 years ago.
If you would read, though, maybe from right to left, it might work.
You know, actually I do. I'm left-handed. This is from the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verses 12 and following, where Jesus is reported to be speaking to his followers right at the end of his ministry, and he says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from God. You did not choose me, but I chose you."
Thank you, Brother Don. I'll be having some trouble reading because I forgot to bring my reading glasses. But actually, I do this deliberately so that I can read with my third eye and impress you. Idfa billati hiya ahsanu fa iza allazi bainaka wa bainahu ada'awatun ka innahu waliyun hamim. The verses say, repel evil with something which is better, so that your enemy becomes your intimate bosom friend. So you can see each one of our traditions has so many beautiful words. What is the problem? You know, one insight I love very much, the wise say, we learn from history that we do not learn from history. Each of our traditions has beautiful teachings that overlap, but each of our particular traditions has a particular emphasis on a particular divine quality. Maybe we can explore those. And I better stop using my third eye.
But you did that very well.
Thank you. You have good taste.
We all know that he read that Arabic accurately, right?
Yes. So the core teaching in Judaism.
Good idea.
Yes.
It was Gandhi who said, in a pluralistic society, it is crucial to know in an appreciative way the core teaching of another's tradition. And we feel that the core teaching in Judaism is oneness, an evolving consciousness of what it means to be one. There was a time when that one was perceived to be outside us, one among many, the real one among many who were not real but out there. And as human consciousness evolved, it became clearer that one means one. One means there's only one being, there's only one presence. And we live in that one. We are part of that one, just as that one is part of us. So that it is the place. God gets called in rabbinic literature hamakom, the place of everything that exists. And that place which we share also awakens within each and every one of us. And that presence that we share comes alive when we meet each other beyond the masks of our ego, when we truly experience the immediacy of being present with each other. We are still learning what it means to be one. Learning it deeply enough so that our lives can reflect that oneness that we are.
Thanks, Brother Ted. In Christianity, we feel the core teaching, that is the teaching against which we measure the validity of everything else, is unconditional love. Now, the word love in the English language has an entire range of meanings, ranging from the trivial to the substantial. But how many times when you hear the word love do you think of unconditional? Or have you ever been asked, have you ever been able to love someone or something without conditions? Without conditions. There is no one word in English that means unconditional love. Grace might come close to that, although even when we hear the word grace, we don't think of loving without conditions. We might think providence or other things like that. But just pause for a minute and think about how difficult, what a challenge it is to love another human being unconditionally. Now, I think one of the best stories that Jesus tells is the story of the prodigal son. The younger son takes his inheritance, he goes to a distant country. We've all been in those distant countries. He wastes the money, comes to his senses, and finally, after getting a job on a farm there, realizes that he really needs to go home, hoping that he might be employed as a servant on his father's farm. And he goes home, frankly, expecting the worst. But what happens? The parent runs out to meet him with open arms and says, "This my son was lost and now is found. Let's have a party. Let's have a party." Unconditional love, forgiveness, as I have learned from my colleagues, in Jewish tradition and in Islamic tradition, is the ability to let go of the need to have the past be any different from the way it was. Loving unconditionally. So important and so overlooked. So overlooked. What a challenge. Unconditional love.
Thank you, Brother Don. In Islam, there's a very beautiful saying of the Prophet Muhammad, who once said that the secret to life, to becoming content, fulfilled, is to understand, cultivate, and practice this divine quality of compassion. Compassion for self and compassion for others. So Islamic spiritual teachers go to great lengths to explain, articulate why this divine quality is so majestic, so powerful. And as in other traditions, the Quran uses the element of water in nature to illustrate. The Quran says, the earth was parched, but the waters of mercy came down. And the earth became clothed in green. Compassion is life-bestowing, life-affirming. Then the other aspect is there is nothing as soft and yielding as water is, yet for overcoming the hardest, the most insurmountable, nothing is as powerful as water is. Meaning, the person who authentically, genuinely practices compassion is possessed of authentic strength. And also, as we have said from the earlier insight, is possessed of a quality that is life-bestowing. Rumi has this wonderful utterance: how should spring bring forth a garden on hard stone? Become earth, so you may grow flowers of many colors. Jamal, you have been a heart-breaking rock. Just once, for the sake of experiment, become earth.
So how is it with these beautiful teachings, the world is in the shape it's in, and we are in the shape we're in?
The world's in the shape it's in, and we are in the shape we are in because we have gone astray from these core teachings of oneness, unconditional love, and compassion. We've drifted.
And that's been the historical pattern, yet, and this is a beautiful thing, in every age, sages have called us back.
I suppose like the ancient prophets, like an Amos, in the 8th century before the Common Era, speaking to the northern kingdom of Israel, calling us back from the empty observance of ritual to the deep spiritual and ethical underpinnings without which spirituality, religion has no meaning. Amos's words still are waiting to be fulfilled. Let righteousness roll down like waters. Well, actually, he said, let justice roll down like waters, righteousness like an ever-flowing stream.
And Jesus called us back in that same prophetic tradition, called us back as he sought to bring forward the Hebrew concept of chesed, which is translated as loving kindness, steadfast love, and for Jesus, unconditional love. Sometimes we might use the word grace.
And the Prophet Muhammad, he called us back from the worship of the ego, that little self that idolizes money and power. So in the 7th century, in the Arabian Peninsula, he declared, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God.
But what's crucial to understand is that the paradigm has changed. In the past, we have waited for someone to arise outside to call us back. And we believe that we've reached, as humankind, we've reached the level of maturity where it's our responsibility to call ourselves back, where we can no longer wait for someone else to do it, where each and every one of us needs to take greater responsibility for the lives we are living and for the world we share.
We believe that interfaith dialogue, whether between and among people who would use the word faith or between and among people who might not want to use that word, interfaith dialogue can become an inspiring foundation for the awakening, the spiritual awakening that we need now. But we have to learn to really, really communicate.
We simply have no choice, really, but to go beyond this polarization. And we have found in our work that the 5 stages of interfaith dialogue have been very helpful.
We tried to find 6 because it was kind of an even number, but we just found 5.
Well, because you get 2, he gets 2, and I get 1.
Yeah. That's as it should be. It's you get to be taller. It all balances out. The first stage of interfaith dialogue, of a deeply successful interfaith dialogue, is not what we usually do. What we usually do is create meetings or create sessions where we either talk about what we agree on or try to talk about what we disagree on. In our experience, the first step is to create contexts in which we can meet each other and appreciate each other as human beings, so that we share our stories. What happens in interfaith dialogue is often we think we have to be experts in our own tradition. And so often people withdraw because that's not who most of us are. But we don't have to be experts in our tradition. We got to be experts in our own story. And boy, all of us are experts in our story. And the truth is we love to tell our story. The truth is the people we're closest to are tired of hearing our stories already. Sometimes I think we change partners and change friends just to allow ourselves the luxury. Interfaith dialogue can create the context in which we can have the pleasure of sharing some of the crucial stages of our own journey. Times we've felt tested, times conflict comes into our lives. What is it about our own spiritual life that has been important to us or that we wished had been important to us? To create a context where we meet each other as people, as real human beings, is, we feel, the very first stage of a successful and deepening interfaith dialogue. And the second stage is sharing what we consider to be the core teaching of our tradition. We may not agree, but whatever our experience is, like what's the core teaching against which I can measure all the other teachings in my own tradition and in others. It's like, what is the most important teaching that I experience in my tradition?
And the third, the middle stage, and again, we didn't set out to find 5 stages.
6, I told them.
We started talking to each other, and 5 stages emerged over a period of about 5 years, actually. The middle stage, in the context of the core teachings, we feel is an invitation to each of us to consider the verses and practices in our own traditions that are consistent with the core teachings, in our case, oneness, unconditional love, and compassion. And also, at least as importantly, to consider the verses and practices that are inconsistent with those core teachings. Inconsistent, and there are.
And if you have actually done those 3 stages, and I repeat, only if you have gone through those 3 stages, when we are willing to be vulnerable, then we enter the 4th stage, which is really being open to enter into more difficult conversations. You know, we've gone all over the country, United States, even overseas, and we see a number of Abrahamic organizations. But the moment the question comes up of Israel and Palestine, the conflict, it stops right there. And there is not that willingness, that trust to engage and to know that even though there are differences, because of the friendship, the dialogue can continue. Now, I and Brother Ted, shall I say politely, we've had over Israel and Palestine very vigorous discussions.
I don't want to talk about it.
And sometimes our pastor, Brother Don McKenzie, has been the mediator. But because we have an enduring friendship, not just on an ad hoc basis, we get together only during festivals, and there's this complaint about interfaith programs, that if you get together only in good times over food and music, which is critical, we must do that, they say the talk is ridiculously nice. But the moment everybody goes home, Muslims become terrorists, Christians become liars, and the Jews become occupiers. So in our situation, because we are friends, we made a very genuine, sincere effort to listen to the other. And this is what I heard from Rabbi Ted Falcon.
Just some of the basics. When I look at Israel, I see a sliver of land surrounded by countries who are enemies. The state of Israel is 1/640th the size of the countries surrounding it. The state of Israel can fit in the state of Florida 7 times. The state of Israel can fit in the state of California sideways. So when I look at the map, I see this sliver of land surrounded by countries that don't even have Israel on their maps. At school, the children learn geography with maps that do not have Israel on it. So what other conclusion can they draw other than Israel shouldn't be there? It's some kind of foreign growth that doesn't even show up on a map. So I look at a country that always has to be on the defensive, that always has to be concerned about its basic survival.
Jamal has a different perspective.
So when a Palestinian, Muslim or Christian, or a Muslim from a Muslim country looks at this tiny sliver of land, what they see is a huge, monstrous military machine, which is enjoined by all the resources of the US Pentagon, which makes it a very powerful, dominating military machine that sustains occupation. It is important because of our relationship. As Brother Don always points out, the key is, how does it feel to be the other? So you might say, okay, we have a nice relationship, our dialogue continues, big deal. The truth is, after 9/11, there have been groups like us, especially Muslims and Jews, who've gotten together and said, you know, we cannot avoid the elephant in the room. Let us connect. Let us practice the 3 cups of tea. Let us talk about it. Let's share from a perspective of being vulnerable. And my Jewish friends tell me, this is what has given rise to those organizations which are growing very rapidly, the J Street Lobby, the Jewish Voices for Peace, because of these discussions.
And it's very important to understand that when we enter into those discussions, it's not to find out which one of us is right. Because the truth is, we know from the very beginning that we're both right. It's not who's right and who's wrong. It's discovering the rightness that each of us stands in. And through that, learning how to communicate with each other. There's a 5th stage.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah, there's a 5th stage also. And the 5th stage is, if we've done the 4 stages, then to be open to the beauty and wisdom of other traditions. For example, I as a Muslim, if I do that, I find that by studying other traditions, I not only become a better Muslim, I become a more complete human being. That's why we say interfaith is not about conversion. It's about completion, becoming a more complete human being. And you don't have to take my word for it or the word of countless people who have done this. Use your being as a laboratory. What happens to you if you're rooted in one tradition when you're open to the beauty and wisdom of other traditions? I can tell you from inner certainty, if you're a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu, it'll make you a more deeper, more developed Hindu or Christian or Jew.
But here's the key, and that is the willingness to name the places in our own traditions where we ourselves have gone astray.
When we started our 2nd book, which really came from the discussions we've had with people during the Q&A time after our presentations, we started looking at the ways our traditions have strayed. And at first we thought, well, there'd be different ways for each of us. But interestingly, we discovered 4 major ways that we felt each of our traditions goes astray. The first is we feel we go astray when we support exclusivity. We feel we go astray when we support violence, often a violence that awakens as a consequence of that exclusivity. We feel our traditions, our respective traditions, go astray when we support the inequality of men and women. And we believe we go astray when our traditions support homophobia.
It is absolutely critical that, coming from a place of humility and sincerity, we name the truths. Not because we want to criticize, but really we want the healing to start and to shine what has been called a more compassionate and a higher light on that which is awkward in my tradition. Now, we must really acknowledge one thing. In each of our traditions, especially monotheistic traditions, the biggest problem we have, the umbrella problem, is the problem of exclusivity.
Brother Jamal, I hear you say that. But I have to tell you that the Bible says we Jews are the chosen people.
Excuse me, Rabbi, did you say Bible?
From among all the peoples of the earth, God chose us Jews to be God's treasured people. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 2.
You did say Bible, right? Yeah.
I did.
Okay, look, Rabbi. In the Bible, Gospel of John, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to God except by me.
Not my Bible.
Brothers, good news. Here is the real truth. The Quran says, whoever chooses religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted of him, and he will be one of the losers in the hereafter. Chapter 3, verse 85. Please take a note for your sake.
So that's it. Thank you for inviting us to talk here. In one way or another, it often comes down to that. You know, when we finally admit the ways we don't think we're being exclusive, but it creeps out. It just creeps out. Unless we allow the exclusivity we experience, even if it surprises us, to be a symptom. Allowing the exclusivity that we experience to call us back to our straying.
What if it is an invitation to find out within us what needs healing, what needs transformation, what needs to really have an inner spaciousness so we can really transform our ego, open up our hearts, and be of authentic service to others?
So as we said before, historically, each time humanity has been called back, it has been to a new place, a more inclusive place, a more compassionate place. But we're in a place, as my colleagues have said, we're in a place now where we can't wait for someone from out there to come call us back. We have the resources to call ourselves back and that must become our new common vocation.
So if I were to look at the verses and the aspects of my tradition that announce our chosenness from an umbrella reality of a central teaching of oneness, I'd have to be able to see that we Jews are chosen, but we're chosen for the way of Torah. Christians are chosen. They're chosen for the way of Jesus. Muslims are chosen for the way of the Quran. We'd have to see that every unique path, every unique group is equally chosen to be who they are. And more than that, we'd have to realize that each and every one of us is chosen to be who we are, not to try to become someone else thinking they're better, but to really honor the truths that awaken within us, the gifts that we have to share with each other and with our world, and to appreciate that we have been chosen to be who we are.
Thanks, Brother Ted. You know the verse I mentioned, John chapter 14, verse 6, where Jesus is reported to have said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," which has been one of the strongest foundations for the Christian view that Christianity should be the only way. It doesn't make sense to me to think that a spiritual teacher like Jesus would ever speak from that narrow place of ego. So I have a different view. And keep in mind that I am is the name of God revealed to Moses in that incredible revelation of the burning bush. And in both Aramaic and Hebrew, the to be verb in the present tense is not spoken, it's understood. So if Jesus said anything like that, I think he would have said, "I am, is the way, the truth, and the life." In other words, God is the way. God is the way. And there are a lot of I am statements in the Bible that I think you could talk about in that same way.
Thank you, Brother Don. I know you made a note of chapter 3, verse 85. You'll be very happy to know that chapter 3, verse 84 is probably one of the most inclusive verses in the Quran. That revelation says that we honor and we accept the revelation sent to us by God. We deeply honor and revere the teachings sent to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, all his tribes. We honor the revelation sent to Moses and Jesus. And the Quran goes on to say, we make no distinction between them. What 385 is referring to when it says Islam, that you must choose Islam, this came at a time when Islam was not even a religion. The word Islam means to surrender to God. And the Quran explains, what are you surrendering? The Quran says, what you are surrendering is your attachment to your ego. So that, and the Quran says, so that you can bring a heart turned in devotion to God. So what verse 385 is saying is that it doesn't matter what your religion is. If you do not do this work of Islam, of surrendering your attachment to your ego, you will be a loser here and also there.
We need to remember that spirituality is always inclusive.
Spirituality embraces the parts of us afraid to embrace.
There's a wonderful verse in the Quran that says, every soul where you turn is the face of Allah.
So before we sing our song, I know you've been waiting for that. The Interfaith Amigos have a song. We thought we should tell you who we are. I'm Rabbi Ted Falcon. I founded 2 synagogues based on pursuit of Jewish spirituality. The first of which was in Los Angeles, and some of the people from that congregation are with us tonight. And the second is in Seattle. I'm no longer a congregational rabbi, which is a great treat. So I have a counseling practice in spiritual counseling.
Why did you point to me when you said that?
So I have an open hour. And I work with these guys.
And I'm Don McKenzie. I'm a minister of the United Church of Christ, which, if you may know, the United Church of Christ is a merger of the congregational tradition and the evangelical and Reformed churches. The merger happened in 1957. I was a Presbyterian once upon a time in my life. With a name like McKenzie, what else could I be? And I retired from being a pastor at University Congregational United Church of Christ in Seattle in 2008 to devote time to what we're doing now.
And I'm Jamal Rahman, a Muslim Imam at Interfaith Community Sanctuary in Seattle, which is a very unusual place. We own a church building and we foster a living, breathing interfaith community there. I'm also adjunct faculty at Seattle University, and I am 1/3 of the Interfaith Amigos.
Okay, but we're going to sing our song anyways. We do want to express our appreciation particularly to Reverend Bonnie.
Yes.
One could say sometimes angels are kind of hidden, and you're just an angel right out there in plain sight. So our theme song has words in Arabic, in Hebrew, and in English. The Arabic is
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, in the name of God, boundlessly compassionate, infinitely merciful. La ilaha illallah, there is no God but God, it's all one.
And the Hebrew is Adonai Hu Ha-Elohim Hu. The absolute transcendent one awakens within each one of us as our God. That is the one. And the English?
The English is it's all one, and I am as I am, which means it's all one, and I am as I am.
You might laugh. It took him a long time to get that.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. La ilaha illallahu. La ilaha illallahu. Adonai Hu Ha-Elohim Hu. Adonai Hu Ha-Elohim Hu. It's all one and I am as I am. It's all one and I am as I am.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again. We were just delighted to be here.
Thank you.